Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
You were getting really into the dancing there. I really liked that a lot. I feel like listeners, you're missing out on our dance skills if you're just listening to us,
Yeah, if you're not watching the video, which we do have on Codex YouTube. What is the YouTube for Codex Podcast?
I think it's just Codex Podcast or Codex History Podcast. I try to make it similar to what our other ones are, but who knows what I did, honestly, and I don't remember because we're in the middle of recording. So,
yep.
Well,
Codex
too late. We got
Video
too far.
YouTube.com. Yes, it's Codex History of Video Games 3434.
Oh, weird. Okay, well, maybe I should change that. But yeah, I don't know why. Right. I don't know where the 3434 came from. But hey, what can you do? Well, today we're going to continue our conversation about the book Jacked, The History of Grand Theft Auto. This is by David Kushner, the same author that wrote Masters of Doom. And we're going over chapters 9 through 12 today. Yeah. Tyler, you want to take it away?
Yeah, we do a little bit of a book club format here. So we kind of talk about what happened in the chapter and like our own commentary on it. You should absolutely buy this book and read it because we for sure don't cover everything. This is not meant to be a replacement for actually reading the book.
No, this is like, we're like what Cliff Notes wanted to be, where you'd actually use us to supplement the book.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. Yeah. If we were going to give you a quiz on the book, maybe you could listen to this. Maybe we should. Everyone gets homework now. That's what our podcast does.
Yeah. We're all about homework on this podcast about video games.
We turn our podcast into them just auditing a college class.
Did you think you were going to play some games to avoid doing schoolwork? Psych! Gotcha.
Yeah, get out of here. Get wrecked.
Schoolwork all day, every day.
The tuition for our college is you have to get me one gift card to a restaurant of my choosing. That's what it is.
Ooh, all right.
To Codex University.
All right.
There's bigger out there. Okay, go ahead, go.
Chapter 9 is called the Rockstar Loft. And they talk a lot in this chapter about them building this like brand that they wanted to be like. They wanted to be more than just video games, right? They wanted to be like this sort of like lifestyle brand. It's funny looking back on this period. It's like right around the end of 1999 because it had some success with the first GTA already. Obviously, they were still figuring things out. They still were in this like prove it mindset. They had moved to New York and they basically decided that the club scene there, the nightlife was dull. It was just like not great. Not super fun compared to like where they had been in London or Edinburgh, I guess. I don't know how the club scenes are in those towns.
Now, London, the nightlife where Tyler and I are always wonderful because we're there in the night. Like we make the nightlife in the towns that we're in.
That's right. Nightlife state of mind,
That's exactly it. Thank you so much, Tyler. That's correct.
Yeah. But instead of complaining about how the nightlife wasn't great there, they decided that they were just going to create the party that they wanted to be at, which is, pretty on brand for Rockstar, I think, even then. It was like also kind of this weird way to like test the waters and see if they could actually pull this vibe off. Like, could they be the cool kids? So they threw like this contest kind of thing. Basically, they had you call a number, like, because there are lots of like secret parties where you have to like call the number and like find out what warehouse the rave is in. And so they sort of advertised it that way. But when you called the number, they were just going to judge you. So they would ask you questions like your favorite music, your DJs, like like fashion questions. And they were like just like trying to suss out the vibe of this person. And they turn away a lot of people, especially people who felt entitled, like big executives who thought that they could just get an invite just because they're like, oh, I own this record label and I need to be here because I'm pop culture. And so they made those people kind of upset. So yeah, it was just kind of this big like, yeah, look at this party we can throw, right? And they got some press for it. Not all positive press. The New York Times kind of ripped them for being like just kind of what it was. They called it the anti-elitist party, which is just a really great primo headline, if you ask me. Like they couldn't decide if they were cool or pretentious because they were like kind of trying to do both. And Sam Hauser took it personally, kind of in this like, how dare you not understand our vision, like sort of thing. Like he's sort of like stewing in this, building up this idea that they're more than just making a game or anything like that. Like they're building a brand, a lifestyle. I think they got too hyper here. Like I think they got a little bit ahead of themselves on this. I do think that they would be successful in doing what they were wanting to do here. This was probably a little bit too early, but you don't learn that unless you try, I guess. So
yeah, I need to watch interviews of these, like, our heroes here, our intrepid heroes, because I don't think I've actually ever heard Sam Hauser's voice, like, off. I can't remember, you
Hmm.
know.
I don't think
So
I
I
have
kind of
either.
want to watch some of these interviews and stuff and see what they say. I'd be
Yeah, how
curious to
nerdy
know.
are these guys?
Exactly.
They're
I
probably pretty
mean,
nerdy.
they seem pretty cool, you know.
Yeah.
They listen to like hip music, and they care about culture. You know, they have Rockstar. They're all about like making fun of the fantasy tropes of video games, which we'll get to later. But
Yeah.
against my better judgment, I'm a little upset at them for that, honestly.
All right.
So
I can't wait to
yeah.
hear more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So they realized pretty quickly though that they were not very good at throwing parties. They were much better at making games. So they kind of stopped doing that. But I think it was kind of an interesting experiment at least. But so anyway, they focused on the games, doubled down on the games because that's where the real magic was happening here.
And the
Um,
money,
what?
and the money was happening with the games
Yeah,
too.
yeah. The parties don't bring in the money. The games bring in the monies. And the monies fund the party. I guess the games fund the party. Anyway,
Yeah.
the party kind of a dud. Ended up being sort of a mistake here. And then another kind of blow hit here. So they'd made some noise with that first GTA, of course, but then reviews for GTA 2 came out and the game was like, it was just kind of mid, like mediocre, like disappointing, I guess. It really brought Sam down. He saw like lots of other games getting better press just for having like nicer graphics, which I understand being frustrated by that. It's kind of frustrating when like you perceive this like sort of style over substance winning. Like our game is good, but your game just like looks good. I also get it, especially at this time because graphics this is still the case today, but it was especially the case like before video on the internet or streaming on the internet, like watching people play games. Because graphics are easy to print in a magazine and like even frame rate doesn't matter there, right? It's just like how good does it look? You could do this at 1 frame per second. That's fine. We can put that in a magazine and it looks awesome, right? People just want to pick up magazines, flip through them. They're not reading the articles. They're just looking at the pictures. There's also another game that came out about this time called Driver. You're familiar with the Driver series, right?
Yeah, actually, my brother loved Driver before he loved Grand Theft Auto. So I think
in.
we had Driver 1 and 2, I believe,
Yeah.
on PlayStation. So
Yeah, the first Driver looked a lot like GTA, but full on 3D on the original PlayStation. That was a really fun game if you could beat the tutorial in the opening parts of the story. It's insanely hard doing the like slalom zigzag thing. We probably talked about it on the show
it's really
before.
hard.
I don't know if I've ever got past it. I'm just like, well, I guess I'm gonna free drive around the one city they let you free drive if you haven't played any of the story because I'm not. And nothing else is like I can't get past this tutorial to see the story.
So that's a funny topic. Games with really hard tutorials. That would be
Yeah.
a good weird niche episode to do one day.
Yeah, it was like the beginning of Metal Gear Solid. It's like that beginning section is, I wouldn't say it's the hardest section in the game, but it is much harder than it should be for being literally the first thing you come across.
Yeah, it's really unforgiving.
Yeah. Driver 2 came out in like 2000, so still pre GTA 3. And that one actually allowed you to get out of the car and get into other cars. It was very clearly GTA inspired. It felt a lot like having GTA 3 on the original PlayStation. Of course, it came out before GTA 3, but it was inspired by GTA 2. You could tell it was like they look at GTA 2 and they were like, we can do that in 3D. And they just did it.
Yeah.
And I think the storyline for that game it's 2 discs. So they went pretty hard on the cinematics and cutscenes and stuff. Like, I don't know if it's good, but it seems like they put a lot of effort into it from being
Maybe
2
we
discs.
should talk about the Driver games someday.
We should talk about the Driver games. There's a bunch of them. There's the third one. They made a San Francisco one. I want to say there's like a couple more too, but we should really dive into those. But yeah, so Rockstar learned from this. They realized they'd celebrated too early. They gotten a little bit ahead of themselves. It was pretty humbling for them. The book talks a lot about like not wanting to count your chickens before they're hatched and not taking anything for granted. Like just because GTA 1 did well is not a guarantee that GTA 2 was going to do well. And they experienced that, I think. You got to stay hungry. You got to keep pushing. And I think GTA 2 just kind of wasn't it for them. This is when Paul Eibler comes into the picture. He's the new president and director of Take-Two. He's this like jock from Long Island. The book describes him as a street smart jock from Long Island. He understood consumer products. The book says he looked at like video games and staplers the same way, just things you sell to people. I could not do that kind of job personally, where you have to like sell something to someone that doesn't want it or aren't actively asking for. That's not something that I can do, but this guy can. He can take anything and sell it to somebody. So he was very realistic. He was a pragmatist. He brought that down to earth sensibility to the company. He was the guy that could build the infrastructure, like the business side of things. And he had landed a PR deal to get their games promoted in movie theaters, which was a really smart move. And I think something that was kind of, I'm not going to say this was the first time a video game was ever in a theater, but it was probably pretty groundbreaking at the time. Maybe they popularized the concept. He also took Take-Two public, which gave them a bunch of extra cash to grow. And they used that cash to invest in other companies, like small indie company Bungie, which actually was small indie company at the time.
Baby indie company, baby Bungie.
Yeah, they had already done Marathon, so they were famous for having done Marathon on the Mac. Like they were successful, but still a small indie company, I think. And they were working on a game called Oni for the PS2, and then they also had a demo for this like weird sci-fi game called Halo, I think. That people were pretty
never heard of it.
Yeah, people were excited for it, I guess. Actually, those first Halo demos were at Mac events, like Steve Jobs shows off Halo, which is I always find that really interesting because they were a Mac developer at the time, and it was like very strange for them to make a game for the PS2. Even like Oni was a PS2 game.
Yeah, we were talking about doing. I mean, and I've also gotten some messages from people about doing Halo like as a series, and we're gonna do it. It's gonna happen. It's just a matter of like when, there's so much to cover. We're never going to run out of things to talk about on this podcast.
I know.
It's the magic of it.
I'd love to do a history of Bungie. Is there a book about Bungie in this style that we could talk about?
I mean, yeah, I think it's hard because I want to do a history of Bungie, but I also know that we could just do Halo separately too.
True.
And give it its due. Because if we do a history of Bungie, we're going to get kind of bogged down, I think, in corporate detail.
Maybe.
Yeah, but maybe
we'll do a history of Bungie like through the lens of the games. They'll talk about Marathon, then talk about Halo, and like maybe not worry about that.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about with Halo 2. So we'll go there. Halo 1 and 2, and Halo also.
And,
okay.
And Halo 3, Halo 2 too.
Halo 2 too. The second Halo 2, Halo 3.
That's right.
Let's get it as confusing as possible. The Xbox Series 1X.
It's Fast and the Furious 10 Part 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so back to Rockstar. Sam's cockiness like just soared after all of this stuff, after all the money was coming in. He showed up at the office wearing this like EA Sports t-shirt. He was like, "Oh, I'm going to work for EA Sports," which is like kind of a power move in my interpretation here. Like, we're so good, we could be the corporate machine if we wanted to, but we don't want to. We're going to be independent, be creative, be cool. Very artistic, very very hip. And this style attracted a dream team of employees, people who are talented, committed, who fit in with the insanity. We got two new characters here, Jeremy Pope and Mark Fernandez. Those two were kind of his newish golden boys. Pope took a pay cut just to be part of the Rockstar brand, which is very impressive to me. That's some dedication, if you ask me. It's not something I would do unless I truly believed in the product and the thing that we were making and got some stock options. Fernandez, though, was an aspiring filmmaker, which, of course, appealed to Sam as a film buff. Fernandez was more of like an artsy filmmaker, and Sam was this guy who's like, I love Top Gun, I love Beverly Hills Cop, like, give me the mainstream stuff. That's the stuff that, like, speaks to the most people, and that there's value in creating that kind of stuff, whereas Fernandez was like, make art for a specific audience, like, be a little bit more, like, cerebral about it, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, Sam had this philosophy of like hiring very slowly. Also, he was making sure that everybody was a right fit. He wanted people who were passionate, who were willing to work hard, and who shared his vision, which is very important. I think we've talked about this before, but like it's so important in the early days of a company is to make sure that the people you hire share your vision. A lot of successful creative businesses work this way, I think, hiring slowly. I've seen it at places I've worked before where the hiring process can be slow and brutal, but generally speaking, yields good results, if you're doing it right. So they started working on GTA again. Fernandez became this kind of details guy in charge of like cultural research. So he would go to one of the examples the book gives us. He goes to Chinatown. He takes pictures of like storefronts for inspiration for what they're going to make the shops in GTA look like, or the buildings. Jeremy Pope oversaw lots of playtesting, making sure the physics felt game. There's an example noted at one point in the book. I don't think it's in this chapter, but I think it's somewhere else.
It's the next chapter.
Oh, we're talking about the animations. Okay, I'll let you talk about it. I'll let you talk about those animations. But I think it's a cool thing that shows their dedication and like how much they care about this stuff. So yeah, that's kind of chapter 9 here, hire people that have the same vision as you. They're like, this is where they're building their brand, both externally of like how they want people to see them, but also internally of like how they want the people who work for them to act and be part of this. Also, I think there's a street race happening outside my house right now. I don't know
That's
if you could hear that,
awesome.
but I'm pretty sure
I
I
couldn't
said
hear
Fast
it.
and the Furious and Vin Diesel.
Doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile.
That's
Winning's
right.
winning. They
I
always
win.
say.
I live my life by a quarter mile at a time.
I know you do. Family. Okay. Chapter 10. So chapter 10 opens with the gang at Rockstar opening a package. And that package was the PlayStation 2 development kit. It had arrived at their office. And then the book kind of goes into the whole like PS2, crazy technology, the emotion engine. Remember that stuff?
It was a supercomputer. It got held up in customs or whatever.
Yeah, governments are going to use PlayStation 2s to do stuff. Yeah, so they kind of talk about that a little bit. We're going to skip that because we've covered that before. But the important thing is this meant it was time for Grand Theft Auto to go 3D. And they actually licensed a 3D engine called Renderware and got to work. So Sam Houser's vision for the next GTA was to make the quote first interactive gangster movie, finding inspiration from movies and TV shows like Heat and The Sopranos and The Getaway, which is what we talked about earlier.
They make a game based on The Getaway too at some point.
Oh yeah. His plan was to make a trilogy set in each of GTA's cities, like their fictional cities. So Liberty City, San Andreas, Vice City, right? And their mantra for GTA 3 was real, real, real. That was their like making it as real as possible. And then this is where they hired I was trying to look up pronunciation. I believe it's Navid Kansari is how you say it. They're an Iranian director or Iranian American director, and they were hired to capture these motion capture scenes at a Brooklyn Navy Yard. So they rented like a special space to do this. And the idea was not to do cutscenes as in like separate rendered cutscenes, but to render everything in engine, right? So everything is done in the game engine, including the cutscenes. So this is where we kind of get into that mocap thing that Tyler was talking about. And this is like pretty, I describe it as a beautiful scene where they kind of describe how they made this happen. And like, I would never really think about this, but the act in Grand Theft Auto where your player steals a car, right? So they walk up to the car, they open the door, they pull the person out, and then they get in the car. Like we've all done that thousands of times, probably playing these games and not really thought much of it. But it was really important to them to make this have like weight to it, like this action. So they actually made like a car-like shape out of sandbags and pipes and used that to like add some weight to it when they're opening the door. They Kansari also instructed the actor that was the person in the car to like really try to hold on to the steering wheel for as long as they can to make it look like there's actual tension there when they're getting ripped out of the car. And it's just like kind of the cool thing to think about that they did this with every single animation in the game, right? They really treated it like it was a movie more than anything. And it's just kind of one of the things you don't really think about as you're playing through Grand Theft Auto. So I thought it was really neat that they highlighted this. For making Liberty City their ideal version of New York City, they actually broke it up into 3 pieces. Brooklyn and Queens inspired the industrial area. Manhattan was the inspiration for the commercial area. And the suburbs were actually based on New Jersey, like the New Jersey suburbs, like kind of your Sopranos neighborhood. Did you ever watch The Sopranos?
No, that's on my list though. I really, really want to.
It's great. You should really watch. It's one of my favorite shows. I've gone through it twice, and I might go through it a third time soon. It's so good.
It's kind of a landmark in television history, right?
It
of
is.
like
Yeah.
A different style of story being told on TV.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so good. It's great, and it holds up too. I mean, because you look at it now, and it's now like it's become a period piece, right? Of like the late '90s, early 2000s. So it really holds up in that sense. So the Renderware engine and the PS2 DVD format made everything bigger. So there was a lot more things they could do graphically. The cars had 18 different collision points on them that did different damage. They went from 10,000 voice lines in the like second GTA to over 100,000 voice lines in Grand Theft Auto 3. they made in-game cutscenes rendered where the player would meet like a variety of gangsters before each mission. This is kind of what gave it that cinematic feel. You know, when you'd go into a zone, it would kind of fade away, and then your character would walk into frame, and they'd be talking to like the mob boss. So it's kind of like a cool thing they did here to add that feeling to it. One major thing they had that I thought was really cool is they got movie stars to voice their characters. So they actually had like Michael Madsen, Kyle MacLachlan, Debbie Mazar, and Frank Vincent all join up. And there's a funny little anecdote in the book about Frank Vincent, but I cannot read it on this show because we're a family show. Okay.
But you should buy the book and read it.
But you should buy the book and read it. Yes, you should. You should. It's pretty funny. Yep. But one major change was the player choice in GTA 3. So GTA 1 and 2, you were the bad guy, right? And in GTA 3, you still are kind of a criminal, but you can also do nice things. Like you can drive an ambulance, or you could drive a cab. Like you could do these things that are less, I will say, less evil.
Yeah, the vigilante missions, if you can get a hold of a police car.
Yeah, exactly.
Which requires you to steal a police car to begin with, which, you know, okay, maybe doesn't make you the good guy, but
yeah, questionable, but still, it's kind of a fun thing they added to open it up and give people space and more freedom to do different things. So that's really what this DVD format did on the PlayStation 2 is they just had so much more room in the game to make it what they wanted and to give you that freedom. And that's kind of what Chapter 10 really focuses on. And it ends kind of sweet with like Sam Houser playing the game, like he's playing GTA 3. And this is where I think we kind of realize we talked a lot about how Grand Theft Auto 3 is probably, if not the most important video game to ever release, right? Mm-hmm. Like inspiration wise for the whole gaming we see now as a culture. One of the reasons why is Sam was playing GTA 3 in the book, and you can change the camera angles. You can actually do third person, you can do first person while you're in the car, but there's also a cinematic camera built into the game where it will kind of like take your car and like going around corners and stuff and like change angles all the time, right? And this is, I think, where we could see Sam's vision was the games to him were a place where you could live a movie. He even thought that you could shoot movies this way. And he's not wrong. Like if you think of machinima as we know it, it was around this time in its origins, right? Like this is where it kind of started and began. And I think Sam Houser saw that. And I think a history of machinima would be a good idea for this podcast because that is a video game medium. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not, you're using games for a different purpose, but like Red versus Blue, all those shows, like Sam Houser kind of saw that before it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool that that's something that was thought of all the way back in like the early 2000s like this. So,
yeah. And we would see that 10. Come to fruition with things like you watch The Mandalorian and half of the sets of that show are built in Unreal Engine, which is a video game engine, right? Which maybe Epic would say at this point it's more than a video game engine because it's being used for this kind of stuff.
It's a life engine.
It's a life simulator.
If you want to take that Unreal and pay us lots of money, you can do that. But we're copywriting it. We put it on this podcast. You can't say it's a life engine without giving Tyler and I a check for $10,000.
That's right. We are rich now off of that.
That's how we make the money on the podcast because we don't make any money like doing this. This is a love of the game thing. So yeah. Unreal, give us cash.
So in chapter 11, this chapter is called State of Emergency. I think it is aptly named for a couple of reasons because there's an actual Rockstar game coming out around this time called State of Emergency, but also sort of describes a little bit of the state of the world at this point. And this is a part where we start to see the Rockstar folks get maybe a little bit uncomfortable with what they're making. So the GTA games can be like messy, like a really like a compelling, morally ambiguous mess. And this is the early 2000s, which is where like the lines between reality and virtual mayhem are starting to get increasingly blurred. Like there are these games coming out that are more and more realistic, that are clearly aimed at an audience that is not children. But it can be hard for some people to like grapple with that of like video games that aren't for kids. What are you making here? Right. And so this section of the book like really establishes this duality, I think. On the one side, we got Jack Thompson, crusading lawyer, friend of the podcast. We've talked about him many times. I don't know if I call him friend of the podcast, but
I love the quick or the instant regret.
He's a friend of the podcast in that we've talked about him a lot. Not a friend of the podcast in that we do not agree with his thoughts
man, the
and
more
methods.
we like, I know we're not supposed to editorialize on this. The more I read about Jack Thompson in the book, it does not make me like him that much.
You can editorialize. This is our podcast.
Okay, because I think it's just like, again, it sounds like it's the problem where people want to blame everything else but the actual root cause of a problem. And that's what I think this entire violence in video games argument is they want to blame everything else they can except asking the parents what's going on with their children. That seems to be the issue.
Because if you have identified the problem as being this very clear thing like video games, then you can just ban video games, problem solved, right? Or if you can like put harsher restriction on them, whatever, like then it's just like, okay, problem solved. But I think what you'll find, Jack Thompson, if you do that, you will still have this problem, and then you will have to find something new to ban. And that's what happens every decade or so when a new medium happens, is we end up having to ban it, or end up talking about it like comic books or even movies or even like pulp fiction novels, right?
Or TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah. And all these things, there's merit to having conversations about a lot of these things, but generally disagree with Jack Thompson and his methods here. But he's on this like religious crusade, right? Like he's obsessed with protecting children from what he sees as the corrupting influence of violent video games. And he's not just like yelling into the void. He's out here like grabbing research, like looking into the psychological effects of these games on kids. I think it's almost admirable if you could get past these like strong moral convictions here. What he wants to do in this like save the children mindset is like, okay, sure, I can't disagree with you that children are important and that maybe they shouldn't see things that are not appropriate for them. But just the way he goes about doing all this stuff does not end up working out for him in the end.
It's one of those things where I'm like, I want to, and I have more questions like reading this chapter. I'm like, okay, so you found this study about the psychological effects of violent video games on children, but how many studies did you find that had the opposite of your argument? Like we're not hearing about those ones. Right. It's like you're kind of cherry picking research to support your argument versus finding your actual, what it actually means according to all of these people researching this topic. And that's not the topic of this book, so I wouldn't expect David Kushner to talk about it. But I want to know more about the whole studying the violence in video games thing and how it's done. That's more of a personal curiosity because I have never looked it up. Maybe I should.
Maybe there's an episode in there, a history of the study of violence in video games.
Mm-hmm. We got to find an expert though. I'm too dumb to talk about that.
Yeah.
So we got to find someone at a university, a collegiate personality.
That's right. I think you're smart enough to talk about it though.
Oh, thank you.
I think
Tyler.
Your opinions matter.
Just
like
what?
Everybody's opinion at Rockstar.
That's right. And that's why we do this. That's why we opinions matter.
Yeah.
So except for Jack Thompson. I'm just kidding.
So back to Rockstar, I guess. They're not making game. They're not just making games. They're still in this like trying to craft a brand thing, right? They're consciously cultivating this image of being the bad boys of the industry. And they knew exactly how to get attention. They had hired Max Clifford to help them with like getting this like quote unquote like bad press, right? And so they weren't subtle with their marketing and journalists. They were like taking journalists off on these desert junkets, having them like shoot guns out the window of a Jeep.
Oh, that's such a funny scene in the book.
Yeah. Like they're just like generally trying to create a spectacle here. It's effective for sure. They understood that that controversy sells here. Max Clifford, again, he's the guy that like sort of, I don't want to say he invented this, but kinda. So they're willing to push boundaries, even if it meant gaining negative attention. They did the press junket I just talked about was for Smuggler's Run with the Jeep driving and blasting it out. It's got kind of a parody of itself and the industry's excesses. Like if Rockstar made a GTA game about themselves, maybe all GTA games are about Rockstar.
Ooh, it's getting meta in here, but you can't say that because then Mark Zuckerberg wants money. So it's getting self-referential in here.
That's right. And now I get money because I started a new company making social media platforms called Self-Referential.
Oh no, dude! I got again, man.
Yep.
Here's my $10,000 from Unreal, dude.
Yep.
I actually what these it's kind of I kind of want to do a tangent when we get to a certain point because I have not played these Rockstar games like Smuggler's Run, State of Emergency. Like, did you play these?
Nope.
Yeah. So I'm like, I want to know because apparently they did pretty well, but like not in my history at all. So what I'm saying is if you've played these games, send us an email about it or
Yeah.
send us a Discord message because I am curious if these games are good, like Smuggler's Run and State of Emergency. What do you think of these?
Yeah.
Also, Bully. I've never played Bully before. We're not quite there yet, but still, I haven't played that before. So.
Never played the highly controversial table tennis.
Yes, the Rockstar Table Tennis. Never played that either.
Nope.
Probably their most controversial game. But yeah
I would say so. Yeah. So this wasn't all just about spectacle, though. It was also about style. They were actively trying to define what it meant to be a rock star, both the company and then the people within it who referred to themselves as rock stars. Kushner really hammers home in the section about how important image was to these guys, like the clothes they wore. That image was like deeply intertwined with a rejection of traditional norms. Sort of like I think they describe it as like it's like F it all attitude that the first GTA game had. Like they really went into that. Like they really leaned into that. But this chapter, when it comes to talking about games anyway, is more about State of Emergency, which is another game that they had on the docket in like 2000, 2001. I think the game ended up coming out in 2002. But this game, with its crowds of rioters and chaotic gameplay, perfectly encapsulates Rockstar's approach. It's designed to be provocative, to push buttons, to generate controversy, but the timing was really bad on this game because there's one reporter who links this game to some recent riots that had happened in Seattle, World Trade Organization riots that happened in the streets of Seattle. I was not familiar with this event. Do you?
Oh, yeah. So I was, I'm going to date myself here. I was probably in like 7th grade when these happened, but they were a big deal on the nightly news because there were straight up riots in Seattle, like bad riots, like looting and breaking into stuff and people getting hurt. So, and it was very much, I mean, this is a pre 9/11 world. So it's very much like, oh my goodness, what's going on, before the worst of the worst had happened. So it's like, yeah, it was a very big deal. It was something that looking back, you're like, it's just a riot. But like back then, saying that you're making a game about this event that happened in Seattle would have really made people mad.
Yeah.
So
and they weren't like that wasn't their intent. They weren't making a game about that.
Yeah, they weren't trying to do that. Sorry. I should preface it that way. You're correct. They were not looking at the riots and being like, we should make this game. In fact, it was a tech demo and they realized how cool it was because it looked like a giant group of people like in like a mosh pit kind of thing. And that's what spawned the State of Emergency game. I'm sorry if I'm jumping to your ahead in your notes. Don't you talk about Okay. So that's why they did it. It was a tech demo and then it turned into this State of Emergency game. And then coincidentally, it reminded this reporter of the riots, and that's what caused these problems.
When the reporter called Rockstar and was like, hey, this kind of seems like the riots. Is that what you were going for? Like whoever answered the phone there, I guess maybe some PR person is what is speculated in the book, like was just like, yeah, I guess it kind of does look like that. And that reporter took that as confirmation that, yeah, this is what we're doing. And so they ran a headline that was like, oh, play out your rioter fantasies in this game. And it was like not a great look for Rockstar. And they didn't want that controversy. Like they were pushing buttons. They were trying to see where the boundaries were on all this stuff, but they did have a line and they really didn't want to like seem insensitive toward real world events. And they sort of did that by accident here. Which is kind of a bummer. But anyway, that like bit of like trivia, I guess, about the game sort of spreads. But it did actually reinforce Rockstar's image of being this having this reputation of like being rebellious outsiders, as guys that aren't afraid to challenge the status quo, right? So I guess it worked out for them in the end. But it really wasn't what they were trying to do with that.
It was accidental controversy.
yeah. That ended up working out for them, I guess. So then we hit E3, and there's a contrast here between Rockstar and the rest of the industry. The other companies are showcasing fantasy worlds and action heroes. Rockstar is rolling in with a fleet of blacked out Mercedes and a crew of bad boys and ne'er-do-wells, right? They had a party at Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles. And they did several parties. I think they were there for like several days, like partying during the day and the night in celebration of their success and rebellious spirit. This is where they were going to announce GTA 3. They wore Don Simpson t-shirts, which was like kind of meant to sort of show who they were, I guess. Don Simpson is this guy who made a lot of blockbusters in the 80s and 90s, like Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop, stuff like that. Like, and he was famous for partying hard and not making it out of that lifestyle intact. So they wore shirts with like his face on the front and then like his prescription drug bill on the back. And he was already dead by this point. So like they knew what they were doing with that. So while they didn't want to be compared to the Seattle riots, they did want to be compared to Don Simpson. So interesting.
Oh man, he produced the film The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean. I love that movie. And Ed Harris. Ooh. That's a great, ridiculous action movie. If you haven't watched The Rock, about Alcatraz, I highly recommend you watch it. It's very fun. It's like, oh, this is a ridiculous 90s action movie is what it is.
Love it. So I'm going to check it out. But what this section of the book highlights is that tension between artistic expression and social responsibility. Remember, we opened with the Jack Thompson stuff. Rockstar was making games that they had intentionally designed to be provocative and entertaining, but they were also trying to be aware of the consequences of their actions. And then, of course, Jack Thompson is out here trying to hold them accountable as well. It's a complex, nuanced situations, not a whole lot of easy answers here. But like Jack Thompson hasn't quite interacted with the boys yet, but it seems like we're starting to build to that, which is why he's been introduced here in this chapter. So we're at E3. We pick up right after the E3 showing. It's pretty clear that they are not getting the reaction they wanted to GTA 3 because State of Emergency is stealing the show, which is like Sam Houser is proud of this game. He's happy with it, but it's not the game that he wanted. It's not like his baby, right? It was like a game that he was just also making. So yeah, they wanted that controversy, but it was the chaotic energy of State of Emergency that overshadowed the more nuanced and like, it's funny to say this like in hindsight, like the sort of more artsy GTA 3, I guess, compared to something like State of Emergency. Yeah, and like people just like weren't that excited for GTA 3. Like we know when it came out how it changed the industry and took over the world, but like at E3 when they announced it, people were like, what's this other State of Emergency game that of course has been sort of lost to history, right? Like maybe they made a sequel to it, but it wasn't published by Rockstar, developed by anybody involved. I don't think it was like a separate thing. But also happening in this time frame is 9/11. And that really affected these guys because their HQ's in New York City now. So like they're directly affected. Obviously the whole nation is affected on a psychological level, but they're directly affected just by being in proximity, right? And this upended everything. Everybody either was or they knew somebody who was directly affected by what happened at the time. Obviously the scope of 9/11 is a little bit outside the scope of this podcast, but if you are a younger listener and you are unfamiliar with this event, which is kind of feels weird to think that there's anybody who could be unfamiliar with it. But like if you were born in 2004, you're in your 20s now, and this happened years before you were born. So,
I mean, I was a kid when it happened, and I like very vividly remember that whole day. Like, because it was like because you were like, it was a lot of confusion. Yeah. Right. It's like you just didn't know. And if you're a kid, you just didn't know what was going on. I just remember being confused and scared because I saw all the adults around me being confused and scared. And that was what that day was to me.
Yeah. And there was a very real, like, so like there's that first plane hit in the morning and then another one hit. And it was like, oh my gosh, how many more are there? There's the Pentagon one. And then it was like, what's next? Is another city going to have like, who knows what this is the lead up to, right? Like, and obviously it precipitated a lot of cultural changes and a lot of things that the U.S. government would go off and like make changes and do different stuff. Anyway, it was a really, really big deal. You've for sure heard of it if you, even if it happened after you or before you were born, but it is worth like going down that rabbit hole, I would say, if you're interested in it because it changed everything. And this all is kind of a reminder that games aren't made in a vacuum. They're made by real people who experience real things and real tragedies. And those tragedies affect the art that they make, including GTA 3, which they actually made direct changes to. So there's like an interesting ethical dilemma here, right? Do you release a violent crime game in the immediate aftermath of a terrorist attack in the US? It's at least bad timing, right? To say the least. So Kushner really shows Sam's like internal struggle here. I think he genuinely believes in the artistic merit of GTA 3 and he's invested in the story and characters, but this context has changed everything. You can kind of feel his distress, especially because GTA 3 doesn't take place in New York City, but like Liberty City is supposed to be New York City, right? And Sam Houser does not want to be seen as insensitive or exploitative. Again, he's like all for controversy. He's all for getting the like that press, but he's like not trying to be a bad dude, right? He's not doing this on purpose. Um, he's not trying to be insensitive, I should say, on purpose. They may be controversial, but even Rockstar has lines that they don't want to cross.
That's right.
And they did make changes to the game here, and I think that's very interesting. They could have canceled it, which would have been an understandable solution. Obviously, the face of video games would be very different if that happened today. But instead of canceling it, they took out things like a sniper rifle dismemberment, like you could shoot the arms off of people and stuff like that. They changed the designs of some of the buildings. There is a Kotaku article out there that explains a lot about what was changed. Sometimes you'll find people online claiming that they changed a whole bunch of stuff, but if that article is to be believed, they didn't change a lot of things, but enough to make it clear that they weren't trying to be insensitive or exploit.
Also,
this.
I could have sworn there was still something with like sniper rifle dismemberment in the game.
There's a cheat code that turns it back on, because I also
yeah,
remember shooting heads off of people.
Yeah, maybe it was just heads. Maybe they just changed it to only heads and not arms and legs, which I'm like, okay, I don't know why that would make it much better, but still.
Yeah, okay, sure. I guess, yeah. But hey, at this point in time, this was like 3 weeks before the game came out. Like at this point in time, it's sort of, they're just making calls, I think, and maybe they it's not like they were able to sit here and take a few weeks to decide what calls to make and then reprint the discs and all that stuff. They were just like, what can we do? Let's make it less violent. What can we do easy that makes it less violent? Turn off the dismemberment from sniper rifle. Okay, easy.
Yep.
Let's change these buildings so that they don't remind people of like the Twin Towers, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were the bad boys of gaming, but they were still sensitive where it mattered, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the ad campaign that happens at this time. Have you seen this? The opera commercial where it's like cuts, it's like scenes from the game that make it look like a movie, and it's like this,
I think I do remember this ad being like on TV, because it's funny because what we think of as GTA now, which is like running around and doing crazy things like blowing up cars and running over innocent people and all that stuff, they framed GTA 3 when it came out more as like you're in a mob movie.
Yeah.
Like that's what they were framing it as. And I think that was the 9/11 inspiration from it, is like, it's like not inspiration, that's the wrong term, but like effect of 9/11, influence of 9/11 on it, is they pivoted from this, you're a criminal doing crazy things, to you're a criminal in a mob movie about your life and you have freedom to explore the world. That's what they kind of changed it to with this trailer.
Yeah. They were selling an experience more than a game.
Exactly.
The experience of being in a mob movie. Yeah.
And it
was accurate. Big. I think it felt like that. So yeah, it was very different from anything else that was on the market. I think it was a calculated risk that paid off.
For sure. And yeah, so chapter 12 starts with GTA 3 fever in full swing. Colin Hanks, Tom Hanks' son, is on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And he was supposed to be promoting the film Orange County, which I saw in theaters, and I thought it was pretty funny.
I think I saw it in theaters. I've definitely seen it.
But instead, he's just talking about Grand Theft Auto 3. And he talks about when you're in the game, you can essentially kill a prostitute and get your money back, is what he's talking about. Like,
it's true.
He's talking about that. And then Jon Stewart is like, what a great gift for the holidays. But yeah, so GTA 3 became the fastest selling and highest grossing PlayStation 2 title, with more than 6 million games sold around the world. Take-Two's stock rose from $7 to $20 in 3 months. Jeez. At one point, Rockstar held the top 3 games of the gaming charts, with GTA 3, Max Payne, and State of Emergency at 1, 2, and 3. Rockstar also started winning awards, including the Game Developers Choice Award. Amusingly, Geronimo Barrera, a producer at Rockstar, accepted the award dressed in a zoot suit and said, quote, "This is to show you that video games don't have to be about hobgoblins and dwarves. And this is where I want to get mad at Rockstar, okay? Because I like fantasy video games, okay?"
I don't think he's talking crap. He's just saying it can be more, and that's true.
I think what this means is we need to have a crossover of Grand Theft Auto and Baldur's Gate 3, where you are in living Baldur's Gate 3 and you can run around and you can just cause havoc, you know?
Is that what Fable is?
I guess, yeah, that's kind of what Fable is. You're right. A little bit. Get those devil horns growing. So this was also a big win for the games industry as a whole, especially Sony. Like, they had an exclusivity deal with Grand Theft Auto at the time, and that was paying dividends. Take-Two actually had given Bungie to Xbox at this point. So even though Sony was like, I'm going to use the term winning for lack of a better term, Microsoft is still doing great. Like they got Halo. They're doing really well at this time too. So it's just a big time for video games in general. There was also a shift in audiences as well that Kushner points out. Like more people that would be considered non-gamers were picking up PlayStation 2s to experience Grand Theft Auto 3. And in Japan, Grand Theft Auto 3 ushered in a new age away from the kind of more kid-friendly games of Nintendo that we saw. Like we're getting some more games with adult themes now in the early 2000s in Japan. So Kushner makes a really good point after this too. Movies, TV, and music were always given that benefit of the doubt because of a rating system, right? Like even though like there's a rating system, so you know like this movie's R-rated, so we're not going to get mad about it, right? Video games were never given that, even though they had a rating system. Like they were often just people got outraged and they ignored the rating system.
Yeah.
Which
in a way that people don't
out.
get mad about movies. When you're like a horror movie comes out that is like gory and gross. It's just like, well, it's rated R, so like don't take your kid.
Exactly. And I mean, Grand Theft Auto 3 launched with a mature rating. Mm-hmm. Like it was known to everyone that this game was not for kids. And yet people complain that it was just available since they assumed all video games were meant for kids because they assumed the medium of video games is only for children, that mature games are being marketed to children. Mm-hmm. And that's just not true. But in Australia, Grand Theft Auto 3 was banned outright. The game was illegal to sell and view. It was illegal to watch and look at this game, according to David Kushner in the book.
Like if somebody was like if a TV show had GTA on it, like that's not okay in Australia?
I mean, they use the term view in the book. This is from David Kushner. And I don't know if that means like watching a movie with it in there or like playing it or watching your friend play it, if it's just considered like banned media. But if you were a company, a retailer, and you sold Grand Theft Auto 3 to someone in Australia, you would face up to 2 years of jail time and over $10,000 in fines.
Dang. Well, imagine that.
For a video game.
Imagine that scene in jail. What are you in for? Yeah. I sold a video game to a child. Mm-hmm. They were 16 and a half and they weren't 17.
And they're like, wait, was it Grand Theft Auto 3? That game's awesome.
That's that why I'm in here too. Inspired me to do the crimes that got me in jail. We're all connected by Grand Theft Auto 3 in jail.
Oh man.
Jack
and then
Thompson
they just all
loves this.
And they all just TTRPG Grand Theft Auto 3. They just make a tabletop game to play all together.
And that turned into GTA Online, which we now know is full of role players these days. So there you go.
That's right.
Fake history video games.
I do love a good YouTube video about an RP server in Grand Theft Auto Online.
Yeah.
The U.S. National Institute on Media and the Family listed Grand Theft Auto 3 at the top of their video and computer game report, warning about the game, saying that it was, quote, the #1 game for parents to avoid. Democratic Congressman Joe Baca introduced the Protect Children from Video Game Sex and Violence Act of 2002, which would make it illegal for children under 17 to buy mature video games without parental permission. Baca said on CNN, quote, these are kids that are being programmed. They play the video games, they take the action in the character, they begin to play that character, and then they begin to commit those particular crimes, end quote. We jump cut now to Sam Hauser's 29th birthday party at the restaurant Radio Mexico in New York City. And they were having a cheese ball eating competition. Now, when I say cheese ball, I want to be clear, Tyler. I'm not talking about the little yellow puff Cheeto balls you get in the giant tub. I am talking about baseball-sized balls of deep fried cheese with spicy pepper sauce on them. And they are all trying to eat the most out of anyone, while onlookers were like placing bets, and there were guys like screaming and like, you can do that. Like they're just trying to eat these deep fried cheese balls. And apparently the winner got $2,000 and 2 plane tickets to anywhere.
2 tickets to paradise?
2 tickets to paradise.
With $2,000 of Eddie money?
any money and any pays go. But yeah, or did you say Eddie Money?
Eddie
Oh, you
Money,
said
yeah.
Eddie Money. Oh, I see what you're doing. I'm sorry. I thought you said Any Money, but Eddie Money wrote the song Two Tickets to Paradise, right?
That's right.
That's right. Tyler, you are such a radio man. If I ever said that about you, just a good old fashioned radio man. I would, you know what? I would actually like you as a morning DJ. I would like that.
I can't wake up early enough to be a morning DJ. You got to be up at like 3 a.m. to do that
Really?
stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
yikes.
to do prep, and yeah, it's I would have done it in spirit, but I can't wake up that early.
Let's be afternoon, late night DJs. Let's be the drive home DJ.
That's a good one. The drive home
That's
DJ
a good
is good.
gig.
There's
That's
not a lot of
gig.
pressure on that. Like in the morning, people need to be like really entertained. You got to have trivia. You got to be doing stuff. And the drive home, it's just chill. It's just like you just get to play music for people and be like, here's the music they were playing. I don't know. Aren't you happy you're almost home?
Dude, let's do that. Let's be the drive home DJs. Let's do that. That's our next job after this. Okay. Or during this. We can do them both at the same time. Sure. So once they were done with the cheese ball eating contest, yep, we're still there. Sorry, distraction. They had awards that I will once again not read on our clean podcast because they are inappropriate to read. Read the book. They also, and this is cool, had an equal mix of genders among the employees. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
And this is the early 2000s.
Kind of surprising.
Right? Yeah, that's not something very common in the early 2000s, but that was the culture at Rockstar. The culture at Rockstar made you feel like a rock star. That was what was going on in this moment. Everyone in the company got a pewter ring with the Rockstar logo on it. They also got a military jacket with patches of the Rockstar logo and the street number of the office on the side. And while being like at Rockstar felt like being in the Beatles, they were all actually laying low currently. Like, even though they're partying, they're kind of not going out in public as saying we're from Rockstar right now. And because of all this stuff going on that we mentioned before. And in fact, director Naveed Kansari was told to lie low and not talk to the press because of the whole quote, kill a prostitute and take her money quote.
Yeah, that was the thing that was always brought out when it was like, you know what you can do in this game? You can kill a prostitute and take the money.
Yeah, what's crazy, and this is something that Kushner brings up, people didn't realize that it's a sandbox and you don't have to do that. Some people were going on the news incorrectly and saying that you do that as part of the game.
Yeah, and you get points for it.
Yeah, when that's not the case. Like in reality, it's like players are choosing to do this, and it's something that developers actually didn't even really think about. They're like, yeah, I mean, I guess you can do that, but like, that's not something we like put in here as like you have to do it, right? It's just another thing you can do with freedom in the game. So what blows my mind about this chapter is that there were people in gaming not on Rockstar's side. Like, this kind of threw me off. Jason Rubin, the co-founder of Naughty Dog, told the Los Angeles Times that selling GTA 3 was, quote, like selling cigarettes to kids, end quote. And I'm like, you're a video game. You're in the industry. You know this is fantasy. You would later go on to make like, I mean, Naughty Dog, so that's like Uncharted. You're making like
Jack
Indiana
2 was a straight GTA 3 ripoff. I'm sorry. It's a great game, but come on, dude. Jack 2
Oh, yeah.
is so different from Jack 1, and it's clearly because of GTA 3.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's a great game.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just Jason Rubin trying to get ahead of it and like being like, oh, no, it's really bad, when it's like, come on.
Yeah,
you know?
well,
like,
I can understand in these times where you're like, where you're not really sure which way the like public opinion is going to go. You sort of pick the side that you think is, maybe you agree with on some level, but also the one you think is going to be the successful one, and you want to be on the right side of history in that sense.
Yeah, the least resistant.
Poorly, but
he did choose poorly.
But we all be going, you know, if public opinion had been different nowadays, like if we were like, oh yeah, well, we all know that like this stuff is bad, whatever, we'd be going, oh yeah, Jason Rubin, he knew it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So the other thing I want to talk about during this, and you kind of just touched on it earlier, is like Rockstar was internally having issues with this stuff. Like, they didn't just like think like, whatever, we'll do whatever we want. They actually did think about this, like as you saw with the stuff with 9/11 earlier and how that influenced the changes with Grand Theft Auto 3. But publicly, they have to hold strong. right? And this is a long quote alert because I'm going to read this entire quote. It's actually not even the whole quote. There's more to it. And I like chopped off the end of it. So keep that in mind. But this is from Dan Hauser. And I'm just going to read this out. This was in a Rolling Stone interview he gave. Quote, "It's insane. We get dragged into these stupid conversations about are you brainwashing children or whatever rubbish it is that month. It's like, how can we as adults be having this conversation when we both know that you're talking crap? It's not even that complicated. If this was a movie or TV show and it was the best in its field, you'd give it loads of awards and put those award shows on television. I genuinely don't aspire to that. But I do aspire to not being called an a-hole, censoring there, for doing the same thing in a video game. So what you're really saying is it's not the content, it's the medium. You've proven that your actions in other areas. So you've proven that by your actions in other areas. So what is it about the medium you don't like? Because maybe we should challenge those ideas. It's not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is to a lot of people. To us, it's a way of experimenting with nonlinear interactive storylines, end quote. So I think that's kind of what nails it. It's like the medium of video games, for some reason to people, cannot be viewed as the same in the same lens as like movies or music. And that's what causes the whole problem with this at the time, is they just can't get over the fact that video games can be for adults and can cover adult topics.
Yeah. To play devil's advocate there a little bit, I think the difference for a lot of these folks, and this is how it was always explained to me as a kid growing up when I was like, why can't I play these games that I want to play? It was always like, well, when you're watching a movie, that's like a passive experience. You're just watching it, right? When you are playing a game, you're actively doing the thing. And there's a difference there, or at least there could be a difference there in terms of how your brain is processing it, right? Like if you're just seeing it versus if you're actively choosing to do the thing, those are two different things, right? So,
yeah.
To play devil's advocate, that's
no,
the,
I mean,
but he's right though when he's like, let's talk about that then, right? You're not actually upset about the content, because if the content is in a movie or a book or a comic book or whatever, like you don't seem to have a problem with it. So let's talk about that, the interactivity that makes this different for you. And I think there is a real conversation to be had there, but I don't think a lot of these folks are arguing in good faith.
Yeah, agreed. And also, I think it's a parental discretion, right?
Yeah.
Like if you feel like you know your kid, they're your child, right?
Mhm.
If you think they're not ready to play a game where they shoot someone with a gun in a video game, then yeah, they probably shouldn't. You know your child, right? But like that doesn't mean you ban this thing outright for literally every other person in the world. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, because there are people out there that are mature enough to handle that kind of thing. So yeah, I agree with you though. That was the argument my mom made to me too. And I was like, okay, that's fair. That's a fair argument.
I think it's a compelling argument to be made. I don't know if there's a lot of studies that show if it actually does make a difference or not. Like I don't know the merit of it, but like on its surface, on its face, at least, I'm like, yeah, there is a difference there.
Yeah, to me, that's someone so vehemently on the other side of this. That's the best argument opposed to my opinion.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with like stores that won't sell a mature rated game to a kid. I don't disagree with that.
No,
like,
yeah, it's like
without a parent
movie,
there,
that's
like
fine.
I think that's fine. Again, this comes down to like a parenting thing. It's like if your kids are playing games that you don't want them to play, sounds like you need to make sure they're not playing those games. That sounds like a parenting problem, not a video game problem.
Yeah, I remember being such a little. I was such a goody two shoes as a kid because I remember my mom wouldn't let my brother and I buy Mortal Kombat. We could not have Mortal Kombat for Sega Genesis. We were not allowed, right? But our next door neighbors had it because it was like their grandparents' house, and the grandparents just had a basement with a Sega Genesis and they didn't pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember playing it one day, and then the little kid, like the youngest brother who was like 4 or 5, was playing it. I'm like, this is not okay. Like, I was like, oh no, that's not. He's a child, and I'm like, I'm a child. What are you talking about?
You're like 9.
Yeah,
playing this game that should not be played by children.
Yeah. So it was just like one of those things where you're like, okay, man, like whatever. So it's just like, yeah, I get that. I think it really is about the kid and the parent and like what their relationship is and how the kid sees the world and how the parent has taught their child about what's right and what's wrong and what happens there. And that's what this is about. But again, that's not a really compelling news story. So
yeah.
that makes a lot of this. But I wanted to read that long quote. Anyway, let's get on and finish this out. So Sam Hauser pointed out also in that interview that they follow all ESRB guidelines, and that if they didn't follow those ESRB guidelines and were forced to do things, that would be censorship, and that is wrong. So while this was all going on, Jamie King got a message. Remember Jamie King? Everyone remember this character? I know we kind of go back and forth. This is the guy at Take-Two Interactive, right?
Is this the rich kid?
Rich kid. Got a message from his dad about the New York Times because there was a headline that said, quote, "Hit video games overshadow companies' woes. Can looting, drive-by shootings, random beatings, prostitution, and drug dealing compensate for accounting irregularities?" This was a cover of the New York Times. So Take-Two was halted from trading on the stock market for 3 weeks by the SEC because reports claimed that they overstated revenues of $23 million.
Can't do that.
So, yep, you can't do that. So this caused problems for Take-Two. Now they try to protect Rockstar like during this time. However, there were even cracks beginning to form among the founders of Rockstar. And that's kind of the cliffhanger we're being left on at the end of chapter 12 is there's stuff going on at Rockstar. There's stuff going on at Take-Two. This is not really video game stuff. This is businessy stuff and personal relationship stuff that we're going to get into the next time we talk about this. But that is the episode today.
All right.
I got on my soapbox a little bit about, violent video games thing, even though I feel like now we don't really see that argument that much anymore. It's kind of past. You know?
I mean, the people who would be making that argument at this point are people who grew up with video games and know that it's kind of bunk. So, and they already lost that battle 20 years ago, really. So
exactly.
I think probably occasionally you'll see things like not necessarily like violence in video games is corrupting the youth, but it'll be things like people are getting cyberbullied online in the video games that they're playing, which is like this is a problem that probably should be addressed. I don't think we should blame the video games for them, but these are problems that do need to be addressed, right? That kind of stuff is sort of what we see more these days, rather than outright criticism of the medium itself. Yeah,
true. Well, Tyler, what you been playing?
I'm still on the Expedition 33 train. I am at the final dungeon. I just did a bunch of grinding. I did some loyalty missions for everybody. I still haven't beat the boss that you have to do for Monoko because I haven't been leveling him up this whole game, and I have to use him in the fight. And also the way Monoko works is you get abilities for him when he fights other bad guys. He like takes their abilities from them and like builds up his repertoire. So if you go the whole game without using him, you have like 4 moves at the end of the game. And so I'm like trying to beat his loyalty boss, and he is underleveled and doesn't even have moves, and I can't really get them for it. Well, I mean, I can, but I'd have to like go back and do it. And I'm like, I just want to brute force it, and I almost got it last night. I was like 1 auto attack away from getting it, and I died, and I was like, okay, it's bedtime.
Tragic.
Yeah. So anyway, I got to do that, and then I'm going to go to the final dungeon, finish the story out, and someday I'll probably do a New Game Plus playthrough on it, but I don't think I'm going to do it right away. I got other stuff I need to play. So that's it. Nice. What you been playing?
I've been playing more Doom the Dark Ages. I'm taking it kind of slow. I'm like kind of playing like a mission or 2 a day because that game, okay, I'm going to say something that I firmly believe, and I've confirmed this now. Doom the Dark Ages much easier than Doom Eternal. And I mean that by they've gotten rid of the weapon swapping. It's a lot more parrying focused, which is funny because you wouldn't really think that for a Doom game, but you got a shield, so it kind of works. And the parrying windows are very forgiving. I'm on like the Hurt Me Plenty difficulty, and I didn't change any of the sliders, and I have lots of time to parry attacks. But the thing that happens to me in all these Doom games, I love collecting the stuff. Like I love finding the secrets. And because of that, takes me like an hour to do 1 level because I'm actually like wandering without a guide trying to get all the secrets and gold. So it's really, I'm getting my money's worth out of it from my Game Pass subscription, but I'm probably like halfway through the game at this point now. I still got a long ways to go, and I want to kind of replay some of the older levels too, because there's certain like spots where I just didn't get any secrets, and I kind of want to get those upgrades, and I'm really digging it. And the super shotgun, man, it's like the best. It's one of my favorite weapons in a video game. It's so cool. that. They have they have a chain ball, like it shoots like a mace and then comes back to you on a chain.
That's cool.
That's really sweet. It's just really neat, and you feel cool when you're killing demons to metal music. You always feel cool. But I can't play it before I go to bed because I stay up too late. So I got to like play
You
it
get
during
too
the middle of
amped.
the day. I get too hyper.
Yeah.
And then I have to like try to wind down. But that's what I've been playing this week. And yeah, if you want to help us out, you can tell your friends about our podcast. That helps us out a ton. You can go ahead and rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow us on YouTube. That is also going to help us out a lot. You can go to our website, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. No, that's our website. That's our email. Our email is codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Our website is codexpodcast.net. That's our website. And that has all of our links on it to our Discord server and our Trello boards. And on top of that, you can send us a contact form on there. Now, if you join the Discord, I should say you have to check the rules before you can see everything. And we recently got spam attacked, by the way.
That's true.
Did you see that?
I did. I deleted a few of them.
Okay, good. Thank you. Because I got on there about 2 minutes after it started, and I was like, oh gosh, and I just couldn't keep up. And then I've never actually like kicked someone from a Discord server before, so I had to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I think they got hacked probably.
Yeah, they did. I kicked them. I didn't ban them because I'm pretty sure they got hacked just based on what it was. I'm like, okay, so if this is a person that actually likes our podcast, I don't want to ban them from the Discord.
You can come back. Just please fix whatever happened.
Yeah, change your password. Just do that, and then you should be good to go. But with that, Tyler, do you want to say goodbye to everybody?
I do want to say goodbye to everybody. Goodbye, everybody.